Hello, I'm Sydney and welcome to my Flock and Squawk. Today, in this video, I'm going to be talking about how I chose the name of Flock and Squawk for my blog and my YouTube, as well as for over on my Instagram. So let's get into it. First off, my biggest source of inspiration comes from crafting, specifically the name Stitch and Bitch. It is a term that's been around since around World War II, I believe, that refers to knitting, and especially knitting groups in the war. It's a trademarked name, and it is commonly used when referring to knitting groups, of course, but I kind of have heard it in my sewing groups, not necessarily as like a name for those groups, but because Stitch works well with sewing also. So I've kind of like heard sewing groups kind of refer to that as well. So I kind of liked the cadence of Stitch in Bitch, and so I wanted something that kind of reflected a similar feeling, the sort of idea of being in a group and like talking, which Stitch and Bitch has. So I brainstormed and I landed on Flock and Squawk. Part of this is because flock is a gathering, a group. I didn't necessarily mean it in like the biblical sense, but flock is what I think of when I see a group of birds. So a flock and squawk. Squawk being similar to the sound that birds make, and also referring to sort of that communication that you're talking while in a group. Also, I know it's not necessarily the best reason, but I kind of like fell down the trap of thinking about how women are referred to. Sometimes women, especially groups, are called hens. I don't necessarily think that it's the best way to refer to people, especially referring to women, because it can be used in a derogatory way. But women sometimes are referred to as hens or as birds in a sense. So I kind of like was brainstorming ways, and I am a woman. I identify as a woman, and I know that I want to be inclusive to all people, and my projects are not gendered. Yes, dresses for a lot of people might be seen as a very feminine article of clothing, but it's just a piece of clothing. So Flock and Squawk to me, Flock and Squawk to me is a very like gender neutral term, and it can be applied to any of my projects. My sewing, my baking, so long as we're don't mind the phone. As I was saying, Flock and Squawk, so long as we're gathering, we're talking, we're sharing projects. That to me is sort of what Flock and Squawk means. That's sort of how I came to that term, came to those ideas. If you want to read a little bit more eloquently put version of it, go check out my blog, flockandsquawk.com, which leads into another reason why I chose it. It's somewhat unique. The domain wasn't taken. The usernames weren't taken. It's very much an easy term because Flock and Squawk is associated with birds. So creating a crafting blog with that name, it's memorable in my opinion, and it wasn't overly saturated with crafting topics, or sewing topics, or baking topics, or Land Before Time movie talking about topics. So from that standpoint, it was good. For my Instagram, I had to change it up a little bit. It's flock_squawk, but my two main components of Flock and Squawk are there. So if you're interested in seeing more, next week, I'll put in a little preview here, I'm going to be doing block 2 for my block of the month. So I hope that if you're interested in sewing, you'll stick around. I have a playlist started for that. If you're interested in baking, I am planning on something special for the future, possibly talking about cookies, but I have a whole baking playlist that I'll link also. So check out my blog, check out my Instagram, check out here every Sunday for a new video. Every Saturday I post on the blog. So thank you so much for watching.